Welcome to Weather Extra. I'm First Alert Meteorologist Jillian Johnson. The calendar may read October, but lately it's definitely feeling a little more like summer and not so much like fall. And that's not only right here in Central Texas, but that's also been the story for much of the nation over the past week. Some of the warmest temperatures ever recorded in the month of October hit some Midwestern and Northeastern states early in the week last week. Highs reached into the mid-80s to around 90. That's between 10 and 20 degrees above normal for this time of the year in those areas. And take a look at this. Since 1970, every county in the United States has seen warming average temperatures during the fall months of September, October, and November. This is data from Climate Central. And all the red you see represents those warming temperatures from coast to coast. Across counties in Central Texas, temperatures have warmed anywhere from 2.5 to around 3.5 degrees since 1970. And some of the northern and western parts of the nation have seen temperatures increase over 4 degrees over the past 5 decades. Switching gears to a major story that broke this past week, a tornado that occurred in North Dakota back in June of this year received a new rating after further review from the National Weather Service, making it the first of its kind in over a decade. First Alert Meteorologist C.D. Finley joins us now with more.
Big news in the weather world. A tornado that occurred in Enderlin, North Dakota on June 20th, 2025 has been upgraded to EF5 status after additional review from the National Weather Service. This makes it the first tornado of its kind in 12 years. The last EF5 tornado prior to Enderlin was the Moore, Oklahoma tornado on May 20th, 2013. The EF, or Enhanced Fujita Scale, is used to determine how strong a tornado is based on the damage it leaves behind. The scale begins at the weakest category, EF0, and runs through the strongest category, EF5. While other tornadoes can certainly cause damage and be life-threatening, EF5s cause incredible damage, capable of wiping out a home entirely with winds of 200 miles per hour or greater. According to the report done by the National Weather Service in Grand Forks, North Dakota, the Enderlin EF5 tornado had wind speeds in excess of 210 miles per hour, which occurred as the tornado derailed a train. The tornado also completely swept a farmstead off of its foundation and uprooted many trees. Unfortunately, the tornado did take the lives of 3 people. From KWTX, I'm First Alert Meteorologist C.D. Finley.
Thanks, CD. Behind me is an update on the latest drought monitor across the United States that was released this past Thursday, October 9th. Around 73% of the nation is under some form of drought. Some of the worst drought conditions are out west near the Rocky Mountain Range and also across parts of the Northeast. And right here at home, with the above normal temperatures and lack of rainfall recently, we're starting to see some changes in the drought monitor. For an update on how things stand, here's First Alert Chief Meteorologist Brady Taylor.
Overall, when you look at the entire year of 2025, rainfall totals really not that bad. We're sitting at a little over 31 inches, which is close to 3¼ inches above where we should be year to date. So again, not too bad, but the story starts to change as you look at more of the near term. Officially at the Waco Regional Airport, we've only measured rain 1 day out of the last 33 days. And October is typically a month that we see a lot of rain. October is typically our second wettest month of the year, so not a good start to the month when we've been dry to kick off the month. Now, you take it back to last week's drought monitor. The drought monitor is issued every Thursday. It was starting to show some abnormally dry conditions on our southern counties and across our northern and northwestern tier of counties. Take you to the latest drought monitor that was issued this last Thursday, and you can see that abnormally dry conditions creeping up a little bit more. Now, we've still got a decent part of Central Texas with no drought concerns, but as you go into parts of Leon County, parts of Bosque County, and particularly in Williamson and parts of Milam County, we're starting to see the moderate and even in some areas the severe drought conditions start to move in. So nothing overly bad now, but as you move into a month where we should see rain and we're not, that's when the problems start to come into place. We're seeing a lot of counties also with the dry conditions seeing burn bans issued across Central Texas. And as you look at the extended forecast, at or below normal rainfall expected well through much of the month of October.
Thanks, Brady. Now on to the tropics. The 10th named storm of the 2025 Atlantic hurricane season developed this past Tuesday. Jerry formed out in the Atlantic and brought heavy rain and gusty winds to parts of the Leeward Islands. The storm would turn north and move through the open waters of the Atlantic and thankfully would not bring any impact to the states. And while the U.S. has not been hit directly by a major hurricane so far this year, homeowners are turning to a new form of storm protection as traditional insurance agencies flee vulnerable areas.
On Oak Island in North Carolina, crews are reinforcing the roof on Paige Morgan's family home. When we visited, a Category 5 hurricane churned 200 miles offshore. A powerful reminder of the destructive storms she grew up with.
I would hear my mom talk about her childhood, and she can't remember a hurricane until she said she was in her late 20s. And I've seen 20, and I was born in 1990, so there's definitely been an increase of storms in our area.
The hurricane-resilient roof on Morgan's home is being funded by a catastrophe bond, a Wall Street-backed financing tool growing in popularity.
But beachfront homes like these, at risk from natural disasters, are becoming increasingly difficult to insure.
Insured property losses have soared from about $30 billion in 2015 to more than $110 billion last year. That's pushed insurers into hiking rates or even pulling out. And so-called cat bonds are emerging as a way to bring more capital into the market. Think of catastrophe bonds as a rainy day fund for insurance companies. If it never rains, investors walk away with their money back and a little more in interest. But if a disaster crosses certain thresholds, say a hurricane of a specific strength or a major wildfire, flood, or earthquake, that triggers the cat bond. Instead of insurers, it's the bondholders who absorb the loss. It's a calculation by financial investors made more difficult due to extreme weather related to climate change.
Has a cat bond ever paid out?
We have never had one of our cat bonds pay out. But
North Carolina Insurance Underwriting Association CEO Gina Hardy has been sponsoring cat bonds since 2009 and says cat bond proceeds are already at work, subsidizing the cost of resilient roofs like the one going up on the Morgan's home.
It is a very good investment because it's considered non-correlated risk, and what that means is whether the stock market goes up or down has no relation to whether or not a hurricane might happen or not happen.
Those bonds are also helping steady the risk on the ground in North Carolina.
If you're not prepared for something like this, you're taking a huge risk. I mean, I've seen families lose their whole house, everything in it with these last few storms, and they aren't insured. They don't have the right type of insurance. And it's a disaster.
It's a bond between investors betting against disaster and coastal communities that could mean the difference between rebuilding and being washed away. Usher Qureshi, CBS News, Oak Island, North Carolina.
Straight ahead on Weather Extra, we learn more about how aging infrastructure across the world is facing challenges as strong storms become more frequent. How are some cities prepping for the future? We have more on that when we come back. Welcome back to Weather Extra. A new report finds the global water cycle has become increasingly erratic and extreme, leading to droughts and floods. The water cycle refers to the way water moves around the Earth. It evaporates from the ground into the atmosphere, forming large water vapors before eventually falling back down to Earth as either rain or snow. According to the report by the World Meteorological Organization, our changing climate is upending that process. Nearly 2/3 of the global river basins did not experience normal conditions last year, and glaciers saw widespread losses for the third year in a row. And as our climate changes over time, some cities are finding that aging infrastructure can't keep up with stronger storms that have become more frequent. Floodwaters are pouring into subway stations, drenching trains and passengers. But the water is more than just an inconvenience. CNN's Bill Weir shows us the challenges facing transit systems built for a different era.
120 years ago, when New York subway was new, few could have imagined it would give over 1 billion rides a year. Despite days like this, when air vents become catchment basins and stairs turn into waterfalls. When the London Underground was new, chimneys still had sweeps and England was 3 degrees cooler. So now, when temperatures top 90 for days, 60% of tube cars have no air conditioning.
When they were first built, they didn't necessarily have sufficient tunnel ventilation to cope with air conditioning. So we've been using other novel methods such as fans and super fans to reduce the heat.
And even this new subway in China shows the perils of under-engineering on an overheating planet. When 8 inches of rain fell in an hour, 14 people died in a subway line less than a decade old.
Through climate change, because the warmer and hotter air can hold much more moisture, we're just getting intense rainfall events.
New York's antique system of pumps removes up to 14 million gallons of water on dry days and many times more during a storm. But while better pumps are part of the MTA's new $700 million improvement plan, keeping water out in the first place means raising hundreds of little sections of the city.
You'd probably miss this if you weren't actually looking out for it. But this is actually about a 5 to 6 inches of an elevation.
So it's not just a step, it's a flood
It's
dam.
a flood protection mechanism.
In one part of Brooklyn, riders take 2 steps up before heading down. And elevated air vents are spreading, designed to stop those cascading waterfalls so viral on social media.
This little elevation right here prevents that from happening and still allows for fresh air flow to happen with subway vents, just as it would be if they weren't covered.
But ultimately, a subway is only as resilient as the city around it. So a hotter climate demands working with nature to build shadier, spongier cities.
Here we have 4 sections of permeable pavers. And the idea is, as the water is coming downhill and going towards the combined sewer, we're actually capturing it again on site and holding it in place.
So just instead of this being blacktop asphalt,
Yep.
the water seeps in.
That's right, between the pavers.
At nearly 500 acres, Greenwood Cemetery is one of New York's biggest green spaces.
With a weather station attached here, it anticipates the amount of rainfall that we're going to get, releases water to the combined sewer before the storm happens, and then shuts off our access point.
And with the help of the Nature Conservancy on a few upgrades, can now keep 55 million gallons of stormwater out of streets and sewers.
And if you think about how many acres of New York City alone are held within cemeteries, if they're able to make slight changes to the way they operate, how much stormwater could be captured on those sites? It's just a different way of thinking about private institutions, private green spaces, and trying to say, despite being private and despite having this fence around our perimeter, we are part of this community.
Coming up next on Weather Extra is this week's Degrees of Science. In our conversation this week, we learn more on why a good rest at night plays a key role in your heart health. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Weather Extra. Getting a good night's rest plays an important role in your health. In this week's Degrees of Science, Brady Taylor speaks with a sleep researcher about how the amount and the quality of sleep you get impacts the health of your heart.
First off, how much sleep should people be getting?
Great question. So we do have expert consensus saying that adults, specifically who have the best health overall, are those who report sleeping about 7 to 8 hours of sleep. Now, all of us agree, or most of the field agree then, that getting less than 6 hours of sleep if you're an adult, then that is associated with health problems, including heart health problems. And of course, this changes with age. So in older adulthood, maybe getting 6 to 7 hours, it would be recommended, like when you're 80 years old, or when you are younger, right? Like in youth, including teens, at least 9 hours of sleep is the recommended amount of sleep.
So say people are getting enough sleep, but they're not getting good sleep. What would be some signs if they were just not feeling well, even though they think they're getting enough sleep?
Excellent. Yeah, no, that's a great question, because sometimes we assume, right, that if you're getting sufficient amount of sleep, you should be good to go. And no, the reality is that many people may get actually the recommended amount of sleep, but they have poor sleep, they have disturbed sleep, and the source of that disturbed sleep could be multiple. Some people have difficulty falling asleep, difficulty staying asleep, difficulty resuming sleep early in the morning hours. Some people snore, some people have sleep behaviors, movement while asleep, or either they grind their teeth. So all these can be reasons why people may have disturbed sleep despite sufficient amount of sleep. And most people know it because they don't feel refreshed upon awakening. They don't feel restored with the sleep.
So we're talking heart health connected to this. What kind of issues can getting poor sleep or insufficient amount of sleep, what kind of impacts can that have on a person's heart health?
So a lot of data has shown that insufficient sleep is associated with or is a risk factor for heart problems. And also poor sleep, particularly when combined with insufficient sleep, as you were very wisely asking me before, that is the group that has the greatest risk of developing heart problems. And by the way, the first sign of that connection typically, and this is something that has been replicated across the studies, is high blood pressure. That seems to me be the first sign of people being at risk of later on also developing heart problems because of exposure to poor and insufficient sleep. Now, the connection between the two, we believe it's because when one has poor insufficient sleep, you typically have elevated stress hormone levels and elevated inflammation, oxidative stress, and multiple other biological mechanisms that link lack of sleep with heart problems.
What kind of advice would you give to someone to maybe help them sleep better and help this potential heart health issue?
So, first of all, calm down. Let's not worry, because worrying about the consequences of lack of sleep can lead you to actually not sleeping, right? But if we want to give people in the public general advice, I would say, of course, good sleep hygiene, right? Lifestyle habits. There are actually behavioral interventions that are very effective in improving sleep. And they are very rule-driven. The 6 rules to get good sleep: 1, get up every day at the same time, no matter what. Use your bed only for sleep. 3, do not lay awake in bed. Get out of bed and go into another room, do something enjoyable or relaxing if you cannot sleep, and go back to bed whenever you feel sleepy. 4, do not compensate for a sleep loss. Get going with your day. Don't cancel things. Don't try to sleep in or nap. 5th, go to bed only when you feel sleepy. Don't go to bed because you have to, only because you feel sleepy, even if that means going to bed close to when you're falling asleep. And number 6, match your time in bed to the amount of sleep that you're currently getting, even if you have poor sleep. So go to bed anchored with your rising time, and then each week expand or increase your time in bed by roughly 15 minutes.
I think I broke a few of those rules, unfortunately. So, and this personally, I'm bad about this. So the taking a nap, so you think, oh, I need a little more rest. Does that help or kind of hurt the situation, taking a nap?
Absolutely, great question. Notice what I said, right? If you have a sleep problem, if you want to improve it, do not nap, do not try to doze, and so forth. But that doesn't mean that napping as a healthy sleep behavior is bad for you. So if you're a good sleeper, let's go back to your first question. If you feel you wake up refreshed, you're getting about 7 hours of sleep. And then in the middle of the day, because your life circumstances permit, you're able to get your 30-minute power nap, you're totally fine. It's totally healthy. What matters is when naps or dozing during the day are a sign of needing to compensate for lack of sleep.
To hear more about the connection between sleep and heart health and Brady's full Degrees of Science conversation, scan the QR code on your screen to watch on YouTube or go over to our website at kwtx.com/degreesofscience. Up next on Weather Extra, NASA is on a mission to map the solar shield, and Dan Smith will show us how their latest innovations will work together in this week's Moment of Science. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Weather Extra. NASA is making an effort to better understand the cosmic shield that surrounds the solar system. Dan Smith has a story of NASA's latest series of trailblazing missions in your Moment of Science.
3, 2, 1, engines full power, and liftoff. Go Falcon, go IMAP, go Swifo L1, and go Caruthers.
September 24th, 2025. It's a 3-for-1 deal as NASA's latest missions head for the stars, or at least our closest one.
We have the IMAP mission, or the Interstellar Mapping and Acceleration Probe. We have the Caruthers Geocorona Observatory, and the Space Weather Follow-on, Lagrange 1, or SWIFO L1. So we have this incredible celestial carpool bringing all these missions to space, saving costs for the missions while enhancing and returning better science.
They're all aiming for a special spot spot in deep space called Lagrange Point 1, orbiting 1 million miles from Earth, joining 5 other spacecraft already there.
We're getting that unobstructed view continuously, and we're also getting about 30 minutes of advance warning of what energy is flowing from the sun towards Earth.
With NASA planning on sending humans back to the moon and eventually Mars, these missions are critical for getting astronauts from A to a very distant B, with some added benefits back on terra firma.
We have a technological society that relies on satellites for GPS, precision farming, even precision snow plowing. Making sure that everything stays safe from space weather is really important to society and exploration.
When you look at the sun, in these images, not directly please, it looks like it's barely moving, but there's a very dynamic wave of ions pushing out and protecting the solar system with that heliosphere. The energy from a big burst of solar wind causes auroras here at home, but also puts astronauts and their tech at risk, and that's where these missions come in. IMAP alone has 10 instruments on board, with each one taking a unique vantage point measuring cosmic dust and other particles. Carruthers will focus on the geocorona, where those particles first enter our atmosphere and give it an ultraviolet glow. This actually builds on part of the Apollo 16 mission, with this photo capturing that hydrogen envelope around our planet using a telescope camera on the moon back in 1972. The third mission will allow for 24/7 observations to give us as much of a heads up as possible for that solar bombardment.
NOAA will be able to understand the timing of space weather events, or when energy is flowing out in eruptions from the sun, as well as the severity of these space weather events or storms. Every minute that NOAA can improve that time for alert and understanding helps protect society on a day-to-day basis.
With their powers combined, this scientific trilogy will beam back crucial data for years to come. For this week's Moment of Science, I'm Dan Smith.
Well, that's all we have for you on this week's Weather Extra. Tune in again next weekend for another half hour of nothing but weather and science. Have a great week. We'll see you next time.